there was breaking news out of Washington last night when the New York Times revealed exclusively that a secret NSA program started 4 years ago was the reason that U.S. officials publicly blamed North Korea for the recent Sony hacking. It was at a cyber conference at Fordham University earlier this month that FBI Director James Comey broadly hinted at this by assuredly pointing a finger at North Korea.
I thought it was very, very important that we as a government, we as an FBI, said, we know who hacked Sony. It was the North Koreans who hacked Sony, and call out that conduct and explain it. That is why we have, as much as we can, tried to offer our attribution and the whys behind our attribution. The destructive nature of that attack proves that everyone has to take cybersecurity seriously. It could happen to anybody in this room. As you know, we at the FBI and the entire intelligence community have previously attributed these attacks to North Korea, and we continue to believe that is the case.
I'm joined now by David Sanger, New York Times national security correspondent, who broke the story last night, and we were able to confirm it, but we all stand in awe. David, you're, of course, one of the people who broke the Iran Stuxnet story. So let's talk about this. First of all, the gist of the story is that the U.S., starting in 2010, was able to penetrate these computer systems in North Korea. Now, what I was told in what you were reporting also is that they didn't have advance warning of the Sony attack, but were able to confirm it after the fact. Tell me about that, because someone would say, well, wait a second, if they're really looking in real time at North Korea's cyber war efforts, why didn't they see what was happening to Sony and either prevent it, you know, call a whistle or do something?
You know, Andrea, it's a question that always comes up when you've got implants, some kind of malware sitting on another country's systems. We wrote a story a month ago about the terror attacks in Mumbai, where very much the same thing happened. There were indications, but they didn't put them all together. In the Sony case, in September, the hackers had attacked Sony with a spear phishing attack. It's one of those emails you get, you know, that you end up clicking on by mistake and it puts malicious software on your computer. Sony began on November 24th, that people began to say, oh, I think we've probably got the data on this.
And so then they go back in, they put the pieces together, and that is why the president was so categorical. This is North Korea, and the FBI director as well.
Well, Andre, you and I have covered the White House for a long time. This is a very cautious president who doesn't normally come out and make intelligence pronouncements. And in the case of cyber attacks, attribution usually takes months, if not longer, and then is usually uncertain. So when he came out that hard and that certainly, we knew that he had to have seen something. The question was, what did he see? And of course, the Snowden documents, for people who've been looking at them as they have gotten released, and there were some interesting ones in the German magazine Der Spiegel just this weekend that also pertain to North Korea, you would see that there's a fair bit of evidence that American intelligence was inside North Korea, a very hard target, starting about 4 years ago.
And with that evidence, why would anyone confirm this? Is this a way of saying to North Korea, we've got eyes on you, so watch out?
Well, you know, I never understand completely why people confirm things or don't, but the combination in this case of both documentary evidence, the statements Mr. Comey made, which had to do with the evidence they saw outside of North Korea. He was very careful in that tape you played. He referred to how they had identified IP addresses, Internet Protocol addresses that the North Koreans had used. Most of those are in China. He just didn't discuss the evidence that they had found inside North Korea.
If they are in their computers, why should we not think that we have the ability, U.S. intelligence has the ability to do what they did to Iran? We slowed down their nuclear program, as the New York Times first reported. And we slowed it down by inserting malware, Stuxnet, into their centrifuges. screwing it all up, to be blunt. Why couldn't we slow down their missile programs? Why couldn't we slow down the North Korean nuclear program? Could any of those failed missile launches over the last few years have been the result of U.S. intelligence malware?
You know, Andrea, it's an interesting question, and when I was doing the reporting on Stuxnet and the bigger program, Olympic Games, which it was part of, I had a number of people say to me that it was sort of a mystery to them that we hadn't done as much in North Korea. It's a question of what systems you're in. You know, you might be in a system that's involving, say, the leadership, where you might see evidence of an order to go do something like Sony. It's a different thing from being in the command and control system for the missile program or for the nuclear program. So, you know, just because you're in one system doesn't necessarily mean you're in others. And then deploying a malicious piece of malicious software that can do damage requires a little bit of different artistry than just doing espionage.
And briefly, to those people who have been in social media saying, you see,
they were taking children out of Boys Town orphanages and foster homes and driving them to Sioux City, Iowa, 184 miles away, placing them in private jets, flying them to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies with Congress and senators and dignitaries. And I covered that in my intelligence report, by the way. So what does that mean? Well, a guy named Rusty Nelson was taking pictures of them while they were doing this sort of thing. And Rusty would take a picture of them for them, because they kept track of the film, and then he would sneak his own film in, because he figured he'd need insurance down the road, and he was right. And so he had these pictures of these dignitaries who were involved in these nefarious sexual activities. Congressmen, senators, as I said. Now, Rusty was asked to participate in a sexual act with a man, and he wasn't any part of that. So he went out a bathroom window in a motel and made his way back to Norfolk, Nebraska. And his granddad had an old a farm there that was abandoned, and he stayed on the farm for a while. And the FBI came around to Rusty, parents, and the mother very naively said, "Oh, Rusty's over at such and such a farmhouse." The FBI went over and interviewed Rusty at the farmhouse. And Rusty says it's time to take off, and he took off, of course. Now, before this happened, during the investigation, Gary Caradora